One thing I've really started to understand this year is just how much peep alignment affects long range accuracy. And honestly, I think a lot of archers, including really good shooters, don't fully understand why it matters. Most people think peep alignment is just about being comfortable or being able to see clearly through the peep or getting the housing somewhere close to centered. But at a high level, that's not really what's going on. What's actually happening is that peep alignment is controlling parallax. And I genuinely believe that a huge percentage of unexplained misses at distance are actually parallax issues caused by inconsistent eye position behind the peep. The important thing to understand is this: your eye must sit in the exact same place behind the peep every single shot. If it doesn't, the relationship between your eye, the peep, the housing, the pin, and the target changes. And even if the pin still looks centered, the shot geometry of the shot changed. Your brain is incredibly good at visually centering things. Humans naturally want to organize circles and shapes. So if your eye shifts slightly left, right, high, or low behind the peep, your brain will still try to force the sight picture into what appears to be center. But visually centered does not always mean mechanically centered. And that's where parallax comes in. Parallax is basically a change in perceived position caused by a change in viewing angle. So when your eye position changes behind the peep even slightly, your perspective changes. And when your perspective changes, the apparent relationship between the pin and the target changes too. At close range, you can get away with it because the angular error is small enough that the target forgives you. But at 80 yards, there is much more time of flight, and the same amount of error is much less forgiving. Tiny changes in eye position become inches downrange. And what's frustrating is those shots usually still feel great. The pin looked good, the shot broke clean, and the execution felt solid, but physically, the bow launched from a slightly different orientation because your eye was in a slightly different location behind the peep. That's why these misses are so hard to diagnose. A lot of shooters think they're dealing with execution issues when they're really dealing with perspective issues. And lighting conditions make this even worse. One thing I've noticed a ton shooting outdoors is how dramatically lighting changes the way the peep appears. The peep itself obviously isn't changing size, but your perception of it is absolutely changing depending on the lighting. In bright sunlight, the peep usually looks smaller, sharper, tighter, and easier to define around the edges. But in low light or cloudy conditions, or when you have a shaded target or dark backgrounds, the peep suddenly looks much larger and is harder to center precisely. Why does that happen? Because your pupils are constantly dilating and contracting based on available light. When lighting changes, your pupil size changes, edges contrast changes, depth perception changes, and your brain changes how it interprets the boundary of the aperture. So now your visual reference point is subtly changing depending on the environment. And that matters because when the apparent aperture changes, your eye position behind the peep often changes with it. And that's the key point. Tiny visual changes create tiny alignment changes, and tiny alignment changes create parallax changes. And that's where these misses are coming from. I think this is why some archers shoot incredible indoor but struggle outdoors, or they might shoot amazing at one range and then start fighting left or right misses at another distance. Their visual reference system changes more than they realize, especially under changing light conditions. Another thing I've noticed is that as we settle into aiming, it becomes really easy to lose awareness of the peep. Your focus narrows onto the pin and target, and eventually the peep kind of fades into the background. Not physically, but mentally. And when that happens, a lot of people stop maintaining alignment and start steering the pin instead. And that usually means the eye position is drifting during the aim. In my experience, if you consistently lose awareness of the peep while aiming, there's a pretty good chance your peep height isn't perfectly optimized. And if the peep is slightly too high or too low, your head starts changing position and alignment instead of naturally settling into it. And so now your body is making tiny subconscious corrections during the hold, and those corrections change your eye position behind the peep. And again, that changes parallax. And once parallax changes, impact changes. But when alignment is truly correct, the housing enters the peep naturally. Your head settles automatically. The sight picture looks identical shot after shot, and your eye sits in the perfect place behind the pin every single time. The shot starts feeling easier because you're no longer forcing alignment during the aim. You're reproducing the same geometry over and over again. At long range, the target exposes tiny inconsistencies. It exposes torque and eye position and head movement, and especially parallax. That's why elite shooters become obsessive about keeping their eye perfectly centered behind the peep every single shot, because they understand something a lot of archers never think about. You're not just aiming the bow, you're aiming from a perspective. And if that perspective changes, the arrows change with it.